Chapter 8. An interesting day for Mo Gun. Buried deep within the Bleeding Sword Academy was a room, sealed off from the outside world, save for a single heavy iron door that was closed and locked. Here was the metaphorical and physical heart of the institution, the confluence of every stream of power that flowed through the academy, where the ambient magic was thick and potent, making it the ideal place for cultivation. Normally, only the academy's dean was permitted to be here. Today, however, the room's sole occupant was not him, but instead it was Lock Yip who sat in the room's only chair, while his hands worked on braiding together strips of leather into an armband. Dexterously, he set about his task, tightly bounding the thick strips around 3 shiny but inexpensive stones. Eyes flickering away from his work, he looked upwards as a cut in reality appeared to drop a man into the room, before disappearing again in the next instant. Mo Gun landed in a crouch, his breath rugged and his right hand clutching tightly on the hilt of his sword. Yip's eyes lingered on the blade as he admired the craftsmanship that had went into it. An ancient weapon made from some unknown alloy that shone like bronze, but was harder than tempered steel. Its blade had a fish-scale pattern that glittered like captured sunlight. They had found the sword while investigating the ruins of a forgotten city that belonged to a civilization whose name had long been lost to the mist of time. Despite the sword's antiquated design, Mo Gun had felt an instant kinship towards the blade and had claimed it for himself. From then on, the sword had served the boy well, while the boy had lived up to the sword's illustrious, if lost, heritage, and together they were building a legacy that would honor them both. Coming out of his musing, Yip went back to his work, and without looking up, spoke to his apprentice.
Not bad. That's 48 steps altogether. 3 more than last time.
Mo Gun looked up at his master, with incredulity and anger painted clearly on his face. The casual manner in which his master had said the words made it sound like Mo Gun had just come back from a casual stroll, instead of having fought his way back from a place where the laws of our reality had no meaning, and oblivion was but a heartbeat away. Rising to his feet, the younger man was about to unleash his righteous anger when a knocking came from the door. Opening the door on Yip's bidding, the academy's dean stepped inside, his posture humble and his expression apologetic. At 60 years old, the decades weighed heavily on Hui San, with his hair and beard drained of all color, while the skin on his forehead was crinkled with worry. Stopping a respectful distance from Yip, San bowed deeply and stood silently, waiting for permission to speak.
Dean Hui, have you come to kick us out?
Said Yip, the levity in his voice making the intended jest obvious. However, a look of absolute horror appeared on San's face, as if he had just committed some heinous crime and was about to receive his well-deserved punishment. Throwing himself to his knees, San started blurting out an apology.
Your humble servant wouldn't have...
Relax, my friend. I was just jesting. Please get up,
said Yip in his most reassuring voice. Complying to the request, San rose to his feet but kept his gaze downcast, as if not quite willing to believe that he had been forgiven for his non-existent faux pas. Shaking his head, Yip spoke.
So, Dean Hui, what news have you brought?
Finally raising his head, San answered.
The Void Monks have announced that the New Star Tournament is to begin 3 days after the Qingming Festival.
Yip nodded his head. The announcement had been expected, for the festival to honor the dead was only a few days away, and it would have been inauspicious to hold the tournament during such a somber time. This meant that the tournament was to begin in just over a month, giving the participants ample time to carry out any last-minute preparations. Speaking of participants, Yip looked towards Mogun to see his apprentice staring into space with a sad look in his eyes. A touch of melancholy entered into Yip's previously jovial features, and when he spoke, it was with a somber tone to his voice.
That's enough practice for today. Go and spend some time for yourself.
His words snapped Mogun out of his musing, and he turned to give his master a weak smile before making his way out of the room. Watching his apprentice leave, Yip felt a heavy weight settle on his heart as he realized that there were some things even he could not shield the boy from. He was so lost in his thought that it took him a moment to remember that he was not alone, and he turned to see San standing against a wall as if waiting for permission to leave. With an apologetic smile, Yip gestured for them to leave the room together, a request that San readily agreed to. Sidestepping away from a mysterious puddle, Fei hurried after Chu Chen as the noblewoman nimbly made her way through the busy streets, while stopping sporadically at any shops or stalls that took her fancy. It had been 3 days since Fei had volunteered to be her escort in the city, a decision he had soon come to regret. For unlike the noble ladies he was used to dealing with, Chu Chen had no interest in the glamorous cosmetic and jewelry shops or the sophisticated calligraphy galleries and music studios. Instead, she wanted to go to the bustling merchant districts and the exotic foreign quarters. As the heir to one of the noblest families within Wuzhong City, Fei was disgusted at the very idea of slumming it in these dubious places, but did not dare refuse his powerful guest's preferences, no matter how unconventional they may be. Right now, they were making their way through a part of the foreign quarters that specialized in selling cooked foods, and Fei found his senses under constant assault from the exotic and pungent spices that filled the air. Suddenly something caught Chu Chen's attention, and she took a sharp left down an alley filled with tiny stalls selling sweets and candies. Cursing under his breath, Fei ran after her, wondering not for the first time whether all this was worth it. Mogun took the last 3 sticks of candied dates from the stall owner and handed over a handful of copper coins in payment. For a moment, he just looked at the common cheap treat, a sad smile on his lips, while half-forgotten memories surfaced. In his mind's eye, he saw his parents, who through the eyes of his 5-year-old self appeared as giants, as they held his hands while walking through the village market, their flat purses holding the few copper coins earned from selling their farm's meager produce. Yet despite their modest earnings, his father would always buy 2 sticks of candied dates, one for Mogun and the other for his mother, but never for himself. The sacrifice had been so small, and Mogun had been too young to fully appreciate it, but he had felt the love behind the gesture. That love, and the realization that he would never experience it again, was the reason for his bittersweet smile. Shrugging off his melancholy, Mogun wrapped the dates up in a sheet of paper and tucked them into the small sack slung over his shoulder, before going on his way. He hadn't gone far when a shout came from the direction of the sweet stall, and turning around, he saw a man hurrying towards him. As the man got closer, Mogun saw that he was about the same age as himself, dressed very well, if a little ostentatiously, and had a handsome face. Stopping within arm's reach, the man gave Mogun a disdainful look before reaching out a hand.
"Give me those candied dates,"
demanded the man, in a haughty tone.
"Why?"
asked Mogun calmly, giving no hint to his boiling anger at the man's rudeness. Reaching into his pouch, the man took out a string of coins.
"Because of this,"
said the man before tossing the coins at Mogun, who deftly caught them. Dangling the string between his thumb and forefinger, Mogun took a moment to admire the glittering metal, before throwing them into the empty bowl of a nearby beggar and turning on his heels. Fire burned in the man's eyes as he let out a roar and lunged towards Mogun. With a dancer's grace, Mogun spun on his heels, allowing the man to stumble past, before stopping behind him and slapping the man on his back. The man nearly fell flat on his face, but managed to catch himself at the last moment and turned to glare at Mogun. The previously handsome face was now purple with rage, and his eyes burned with bloody murder, made all the worse when he saw the mocking smile on Mogun's face. Fei readied himself to strike, determined to avenge himself upon the upstart standing before him. The fact that the man had dared refuse him was bad enough, but what really made his actions unpardonable was that he had made Fei lose face in front of Chu Chen, an offense that demanded bloody retribution. Yet despite his rising anger, Fei did not rush into attacking, having realized from their initial exchange that his opponent was not unskilled in martial arts. In his mind, Fei reassured himself that his caution was just the sensible thing to do, and that he was in no way afraid of the man who had nearly toppled him with casual ease. His resolve was sorely tested as the smile on the man's face spread, fanning Fei's anger and fueling his need for revenge. Forcing down the fury, Fei inched his way forward, his arms held in a defensive position, and his knees slightly bent for balance. Still, the man did not move, but just stood there, smiling his cat-like grin as if he didn't have a care in the world. Finally, having arrived within arm's reach of his opponent, Fei struck. With the speed of a cobra, his lead fist shot out towards the man's jaw, determined to wipe that infuriating smirk from his face. Yet just as his blow was about to connect, Fei let out a cry and stumbled backwards, paralyzing pain lancing through his right shoulder. It took a moment for the young nobleman to realize what had happened, but even as comprehension dawned upon him, he could not believe it. Somehow his opponent had intercepted his attack with one of his own, striking Fei on the shoulder before his fist could land, and breaking the momentum of his attack. But when had the man struck? Fei had never taken his eyes off of him, and could have sworn that the man had never so much as twitched. Yet facts were facts. Fei had been struck, and struck so hard that his entire right arm had gone numb. Abandoning trying to solve the mystery of how his opponent had attacked, Fei instead concentrated on finding a way to pay the man back for his audacity. Understanding that his opponent was no ordinary fighter, Fei decided to face him with extraordinary means. Summoning his magic, he felt power coursing through his body, washing away his pain and invigorating his soul. Channeling the magic to the surface of his body, Fei's muscles bulged to twice their normal size, and stretching the fabric of his clothes to the point of tearing. As his muscles swelled, his skin also began to change, becoming coppery red and as hard as marble. Having awakened his body-refining technique, Fei lunged forward with blinding speed, confident that this time he would overcome any tricks his opponent might have. Invisible blows danced along Fei's skin, striking in locations that, under normal circumstances, would have incapacitated him. But now, in his magically enhanced state, he paid them no more mind than he would a light rain. Once more, he sent a mighty fist toward his opponent's face. But like before, this also failed to land, for his opponent was no longer standing in the spot that the blow was aimed at. The man hadn't dodged or stepped aside. He had simply disappeared. Confusion colored Fei's features as he desperately scanned his surroundings in a vain attempt to locate his vanished opponent. Suddenly, a dozen blows struck him from behind, each one aimed at a meridian point that controlled breathing and qi flow. Spinning on his heels, Fei lashed out with a back-handed fist, but caught nothing except air for his efforts. Another series of blows, this time from his left side, struck him, and he desperately turned in the direction of the attack, only to find nothing there. And so it continued, with Fei being peppered by blows he could not see, from an opponent he could not find, until finally he felt like he would go mad from the frustration. From her vantage point away from the fight, Aunt Lin could see that Lord Ko was in trouble, and she began moving to intercede in the fight, but found her path blocked by Chu Chen's outstretched hand.
It's all right. The man has no intention of killing Lord Ko,
the young lady said with a confident smile on her lips. Redirecting her attention to the men, Aunt Lin saw that Chu Chen was right. Contrary to what Fei thought, his opponent had not turned invisible, but had instead enhanced his movements with magic, allowing him to move with incredible speed at a short distance of 3 to 4 feet. Using the technique the man had circled around Fei, then with a combination of exquisite footwork and impeccable timing, continued to stay out of the nobleman's line of sight while raining blows down on his blind spots. Each strike landed with flawless accuracy, but no killing intent, for the man was wearing a smile that was completely devoid of any malice or cruelty. Instead, it was the smile of a young man having fun. In contrast, Fei's expression was getting darker and darker as he continued to fail at coming to grips with his elusive opponent, causing his handsome features to twist into an ugly snarl. Catching the growing desperation in the nobleman's feature, Chu Chen's smile dropped and her face hardened with determination.
It is time to end this farce,
she declared before making her move. Mogun lunged again, his right index and middle finger aimed at the point where his opponent's neck met the skull, when suddenly there was movement from the side. Quickly he darted away, a second before a woman appeared, standing in the spot he had just vacated, facing him with an outstretched hand, while the other hand rested on the back of the man he had been fighting. Despite its delicate appearance, the hand had stopped all movements from the man, restraining him with powerful magic that he could not resist.
Enough,
declared the woman in an authoritative voice that contradicted her small stature. Mogun took a moment to study the new arrival. At about the same age as himself, she was more than a head shorter than the men she was standing between. Yet despite the difference in height, she held herself with absolute confidence as she played the role of mediator. Immediately, the enraged man spun around but was stopped dead by a stern look from the woman. Like an unruly child that was about to be disciplined by his parent, the man shrunk away from his much smaller companion, the power he had summoned dissipating swiftly and returning his appearance to normal. With the man suitably cowed, the woman turned back to Mogun.
Sir, my name is Chu Chen, family name Zhang, and on my companion's behalf, I apologize for this incident.
Unable to detect any hint of deceit or insincerity in the woman's voice, Mogun cautiously accepted the apology at face value, but took care to maintain a safe distance from the woman before replying.
Apology accepted, my lady. My name is Mogun, and I am at your service.
A look of expectation entered into Chu Chen's eyes, as if she was expecting something more from Mogun's introduction, and it took him a moment to realize that she was waiting for him to declare his family name, something he did not have. Suddenly, Chu Chen's cheeks blushed with embarrassment as she realized her mistake. Hurriedly, she bid a farewell before grabbing her companion's sleeve and dragging him away. She hadn't gone far when she heard Mogun calling out from behind and turned to see him walking towards her while reaching into the sack slung over his shoulder. Stopping a respectful distance away, Mogun pulled out a paper bundle and unwrapped it to show 3 sticks of candied dates. Picking up one of the sticks, he held it out to Chu Chen.
These are not for sale, my lady, but they are for sharing with a friend.
Mogun said, with a gentle smile that instantly widened as he saw the look of pure, innocent joy that lit up Chu Chen's face.